What unfolded when I shared a hotel room with my boss during a work trip turned my life upside down. My husband discovered the truth, and by the next morning, he had filed for divorce. This isn't just a tale of infidelity. It's the story of how I lost my sense of self, my marriage, and my career in a cascade of poor choices and hidden truths I could no longer conceal. It all began with what seemed like a routine business trip. My company sent me and my boss to a conference in a distant city, but due to budget constraints, they reserved only one hotel room for us both. When I learned of this arrangement, disbelief washed over me. Sharing a room with my boss felt deeply inappropriate. Yet I reassured myself I could manage. It was only for a few nights, and we were both married, responsible adults. Surely nothing would go wrong. Or so I convinced myself. The reality was my boss and I had a tangled past. Over the months, we'd shared fleeting, clandestine moments. Not serious, just occasional escapes from our respective lives. We both had families and understood the boundaries. It was a reckless indulgence, one I told myself was under control. But when we arrived at the hotel and received the key to a single room, that sense of control began to crumble. Stepping into the room, a heavy knot formed in my gut. There was only one bed. I considered fleeing, asking for another room, but none were available. My pulse quickened, and I struggled to act composed. My boss seemed unfazed, but I sensed his unease beneath the surface. That first night was excruciating. Sleep eluded me as my mind raced with the implications of our situation. I kept imagining what my husband would think if he knew. My boss tried to keep things light, as if nothing improper could happen. But as the night deepened, the boundaries we'd set began to fade. We talked, we laughed, and soon we crossed the line we'd sworn to avoid. In those moments, I lost sight of who I was. I abandoned the promises I'd made, the life I'd built. For a few reckless hours, I became someone else. Someone careless, someone unmoored. My boss and I shared that bed. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did, and there was no way to erase it. Back home, my husband was trying to reach me, calling repeatedly, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Fear paralyzed me. I knew if I picked up, he'd sense something was off, and I wasn't ready to confess that I was sharing a room and a bed with another man. So, I let the calls go unanswered, hoping my silence would shield me. Unbeknownst to me, my husband grew increasingly desperate. When he couldn't get through, he went to my office and questioned the receptionist about my whereabouts. They gave him the name of the hotel and the city where the conference was held. I had no idea he was on his way. When my husband arrived at the hotel, the sight that greeted him shattered everything. He found me and my boss in the same room, the same bed. The pain in his eyes was unbearable, a raw wound I'd inflicted. At first, he said nothing, just unleashed a scream of anguish and rage. I tried to explain, to insist it wasn't what it seemed, but he wouldn't hear me. He turned and walked away, leaving me in that sterile, cold room. I chased after him, pleading for him to stop, to let me explain, but he was resolute. He got into his car and drove off, leaving me broken and frantic. When I finally returned home, the worst was yet to come. My husband was packing my belongings. In a voice devoid of warmth, he told me our marriage was over and that he was filing for divorce the next day. I begged, apologized, tried to convince him it was a fleeting lapse, a mistake, but his decision was final. He shut me out completely. The days that followed were a descent into despair. My boss, terrified that his own wife might discover our indiscretion and leave him, severed all contact with me. He handed me a sum of money as if it could mend the wreckage, and then terminated my employment. He wanted no trace of our mistake to remain. Now I'm left with nothing. No husband, no job, no sense of who I am. The choices I made that night cost me everything I held dear. I carry the weight of those consequences every day, struggling to rebuild a life fractured by one catastrophic decision. This story serves as a cautionary tale. A single crossed line can unravel your entire world.